Welcome to the 18th episode of the Engage Your Fanbase podcast. My name is Kara Karma with Simon Says Booking and Publicity, where I am a publicist, and I am joined, as always, by the newly coiffed Erwin Schmankovitz of Ever Upward Entertainment. How
Yeah,
you doing, hon?
I'm doing well.
Back from the Galapagos.
Back from the
You,
Galapagos,
you don't
full
look very tan,
throttle.
though. Is it the
Well,
lighting, or?
I was pretty pale when I left.
Uh,
I definitely got some sun. I mean, I lathered myself up every day in sunscreen. The sun's pretty brutal down there, but came back with 15 inches off my head. So,
did you do it down there?
no, I did it up here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's quite a remarkable change. You are
yeah,
no
it's
longer a
yeah,
damn
totally opposite.
hippie look.
Yeah, I look like my opposite twin.
Yeah, it's your alter ego.
Yeah.
All right, so today we are going to be talking about how to have some killer band branding and the importance of branding and the importance of bios that are branded and why and how to do that. So I thought that we would start today for people who are less familiar with what branding is and what a brand is, to start with what the actual definition of a brand is. And I looked it up, and it says a name, term, design, symbol, or any other feature that identifies one seller's good or service as distinct from those of another seller. So essentially, it's a brand is the essence of what you stand for. It includes all the intangibles of what you what your band is standing for. I think of a really good example. My favorite example of a good brand is Target, and that's a visual brand, and just you think of that, you see that symbol, that Target symbol, and you think of like good, decent quality, good prices, clean stores. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like it's
I mean,
very, very strong branding. And with a band, you need the fans and venues and festival buyers and record labels and everybody to immediately identify with your name and maybe your logo or any kind of symbols that you're using, um, uh, to have these associations, these intangible associations in their mind of what your band stands for. Either sometimes it's politically, sometimes it's about charity, but most of the time it's about music and what you sound like and what you feel like when you're live, and that's what your band brand is. I'm sure in your management, you're managing the John T's brand all the time through all your marketing
yeah,
efforts.
absolutely. And a big thing about branding is, and we might get into this later, I'm sure, but the consistency of that brand. Like you say, all these intangibles, all these things you don't really think about, such as fonts and colors.
Mhm.
Those are very, very basic things, but things that are very important with branding your own band, and being able to consistently portray yourself as what you want to be represented as.
Yep, exactly. And it comes down to what you mean in the mind of your fan. What 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 space and what feel and what you make people feel like, and that has to, all of your marketing has to evoke that feeling through your branding. Um, and it's really, your brand is what sells you to the venues and festivals and record labels and radio stations and all the people that you ultimately want to work with.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so why does a bio need to be branded? I thought that was a really important question. Um, who it starts with who reads your bio, because bands create bios all the time, and to varying degrees of success. And
Yeah.
yeah, and you can tell when you read a bio that's well written, And because it speaks to the fans and it speaks to the buyers, it speaks to the press. It's got to be able to speak and to a wide swath of people who have um, different agendas with reading your bio. Fans,
Yeah,
go ahead.
absolutely. Yeah, and if I can even back up a little bit, going back
Hmm.
to branding is, I mean, when it comes down to it, music is the most important aspect of this. That's what we're talking
Of
about,
course.
But as a musician, you need to find a brand that speaks um, for your music. Something that fits you, whether you are, a circus punk rock band, or you are some, indie singer songwriter, or you are a jam band and just a straight funk band. It's got to be consistent with your music, and piggybacking on that, the bio is even more important in some aspects. I mean, like you said, you're selling your bio, you're selling yourself. Your bio is pretty much your resume as a musician, and that's something that a lot of bands don't really grasp, or don't put much importance in it, because it's just by they'll listen to my music and my music will sell itself. Well, the truth is that yes, your music sells you, but it's not the only thing that sells you. A great bio and like you said, a branding and something that is consistent within each other is what really sells you as a package deal.
Well, and it's not even that it sells you. A lot of times your bio ends up being people's first point of contact with you. They might see it in a Facebook event that they got invited to, or they might see it in a, your bios get used in press releases and in the press all the time. And people are reading this and understanding who you are and say, oh, that sounds interesting. I want to check that out. That, like you said, it's a resume. And if it's not evoking something for potential fans or other people who are reading it, they're not going to take that next step and listen to the music that you say stands by itself, right?
Right.
You've got
Yeah,
to have
absolutely.
that. So, um, so who uses the bio? I think is really important I think a lot of bands don't really realize this, but um, it's a lot of times you're taking it for promotion and for the press all the time. People are using in writing press releases. I use bands bios all the time, and then those get reused in the articles that get printed out of that publicity. And the other thing is when venues are going and doing some kind of promotion for the gigs, and they're trying to, market what the next show you have at their venue and that kind of thing, they're going to be using that bio and verbatim all the time. They're not going to come up with some new exciting way of explaining who you are. You are the one that knows who you are and what it stands for and what makes you unique, and they're going to be using that. So it's really important to keep in mind how often it's going to be reused and recycled.
Yeah, definitely. And on that point, talking like you said, bios are used for all your press releases, for any, if you've any bands out there who've booked a venue knows that, the first thing that a venue asks for is a bio and a photo to be able to promote,
Yeah.
on their website. And one important point to make on that is that it is ever evolving. Just as your band, your
Hmm.
bio should be ever evolving.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be a span of 6 months, even 6 months, that you use the same bio, because like you said, your bio is your story, your bio is your resume. As an up and
Yeah.
coming growing musician, I would hope that you are playing bigger venues, you are playing with different bands, you are hitting different festivals. So all these things are again resume builders that the first thing a band should do is use that in their bio to help with their pitch, because your bio is used everywhere, and that's one thing that like you said, a lot of bands don't really recognize. They might think the music is more important, or the videos are more important. So yeah, it's all very important, but when it comes down to it, if a venue needs something to describe your band to get to people who don't know you, the bio is obviously their first choice of doing that. So,
Yeah.
along with that as well, finding a good way to really verbalize the brand of your band. And again, that kind of goes back to the whole body of the bio. That's what it's there for, really.
Well, and along those lines of what you're saying, you're talking about how to come up with your brand, how to figure out what your brand is, and what is that one unique thing that sets you apart from other bands. Because essentially, I mean, you need to think of, a lot of bands you're collaborating with, they're your friends, but ultimately they are competing in a very, very highly competitive market. For the same venues and the same fans. And you need to be able to articulate what makes you different, what makes you stand out and makes you special and unique. And one thing that I do with my clients when I'm helping brand them is I ask them to simply sit down and make a never-ending list of any genres, adjectives, feelings, thoughts, anything that associates with your brand, and they can be with your band and your music and your performance features, and they can be phrases, and they can be just short little words that come out that pop into your mind. And after you've gone through this exercise as a band, and I really recommend doing it as an entire band, sitting down, have a brainstorming session, and just keep like throwing stuff out, just writing it down, get down 50 different words or phrases, and then go through them and cull them a bit and figure out, okay, this one particular word really, kind of captures what it is that we're all about. And being able to use those keywords and identify what they are and come up with a list of 5 to 10 of them and sprinkle your bio with them. And that is going to make your bio so much stronger and so much more branded, and really be able to articulate what makes you stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, and I think, going on what you're saying, which, isn't necessarily a bio per se, and it's one thing I've realized a lot recently as well is, the number one question I feel like that someone asks about a band, whether it be, you're talking to someone, you're like, hey, check out my band, or, this band is awesome, check out this band. The number one thing that anyone asks is, what do they sound like? And that's a very hard question to answer. I mean, it's nearly impossible to answer that question if you are, that unique band that you want to get your sound out there. But, brainstorming and getting these words and, these words that you can sprinkle on your bio and finding a way to describe your sound in, it doesn't have to be in a genre. It can be, in a phrase. I remember this one band I used to manage called Old U out of Charleston it was a publicist who wrote for them in the paper, and they had a super, super catchy way to describe their sound. And it was something like, if modern jazz went in a time machine, went back to the 60s and brought back doo-wop with them. It was something, clever like that really, really encompassed their sound and their, something about like Janis Joplin was in there as well, because their lead singer used to be like amazing. But something that really was catchy and really kind of captivated their sound. So going back to your brainstorming session, I think that's something very important that isn't necessarily a bio, but something that every band should know how to answer. If they're asked for that question.
Yeah, one of my favorite lines of a band that I work with is, imagine what you would get if Salvador Dali and Toulouse-Lautrec were fronting the Moulin Rouge's house band. I mean, that really encapsulates and brings a picture to your mind, right?
Right.
Something that's just reminded me of that, what you were just saying,
coming
up with ways to describe things that are slightly outside of the box, and creative, but really get to the heart of either maybe your sound and also your performance, because a lot of times your performance, the features of your performance are really going to be very big part of your brand. Sometimes the sound is just part of the brand, but sometimes it's really about the whole experience too. So it's important to remember that as well. So what should be in a bio? Uh, I took some notes just to outline the different pieces that would be a part of a complete bio. Uh, you need to do talk about make an official label of your genre and describe your sound, like you just said. The first and foremost, it has to be in there. You have to. I mean, I've seen bios where people they don't describe what they sound like. It's
Right.
amazing,
Yeah.
and I was like,
Yeah. It's
I don't know what to do with
a little
you.
baffling sometimes.
Yeah, and they're like, we started, because a lot of times people think in their bio it needs to just be the history, the band history, and who's in the
Right.
band, and that's an important part of it, and it is an aspect of it, but that's just one paragraph in your bio. But the most important thing to get out there is this what do you sound like, and what is it? What are people going to get when they come
Right.
to hear you and see you and listen on on the radio or wherever they're listening. um,
Yeah. And I do have to touch on this as well because I do think it's an important part. And I do think you're completely right. I think a lot of bands when they write bios, they do focus a lot on, the members and the history and when they started and, the personal history of the members, which when you get to that, it's like, all right, this is not the story of the members. This is a story of a band. Um, Going on that, there's a lot of times also where I've worked with a few bands that have different styles of bios as well. One that you can, like again, the one phrase, and then you can have a longer one, which like you said, uh, explains about the band and their sound, and what is unique about them, and then another last paragraph that goes through the band members. Because I mean, I can tell you from a festival or a venue's perspective, they're not going to care where your guitarist was born. They're looking to read what your band has to offer and what your band sounds like, not the personal history of the people in the band. As many
one
people out there know, bands break up all the time or add new members all the time, which again, you should be adding in your bio if
mhm,
that happens. But that
mhm,
shouldn't be the first thing that you send to someone.
yeah. Well, one part I would say about that is I do think that it's important to have in there bands that members have been a part of before as part of the history. I think
Right.
that's a really important piece to have in there. Um, uh, and one thing that you said there really hit me and reminded me of something that's really important. When you're writing your bio, you need to think about writing different length bios, like maybe different bios for different purposes as well. But I recommend starting with a long bio. So you're going to have all of these pieces. So, like we're talking about, your sound needs to have your location. Uh, where are you? Because if you're from Massachusetts and somebody's trying to book you in Los Angeles, they need to know where you're from. It makes a big difference. It does. It makes a really
Yeah,
big
yeah,
difference. Um, and what makes you unique, like I said before, that what makes you stand out from the crowd needs to come out in all the different parts of, you don't have to say this is what makes us unique. I mean, you can in a colorful, creative way, but but it needs to come out in the different all through your bio. Um, and the band history, the band members, like you're saying, if you had any awards, that's a great thing to put in. Latest news and future plans are really important to put in your bio as well. But like I said, the starting with a long bio and then thinking about making a medium and a short bio. So a medium bio, it's actually good to think about it in terms of Facebook. When your Facebook page, there's three places for bios in your Facebook
right,
page, and you've got that first one that's like an elevator speech. So it's essentially the same length. It's a little bit longer, but essentially the same length as your Twitter profile. And
right, right.
thinking about that as your elevator speech is like when somebody comes up to you and says, oh, you're in a band. What kind of band? What are you guys all about? You need to have this like down pat and something that can come off your tongue easily and explain who you are. And then there's that medium bio, which, as as someone who does marketing for a venue, and is using people's, bands bios all the time, having that bio that's in between, where you can use that to promote a band in like a paragraph, that kind of encapsulates everything but doesn't go into the history of everything.
Right.
And then that long one that you're going to use, and that the press is going to be able to refer to, and that your fans are going to be able to read and really understand what you guys are all about. So.
Yeah. To touch on a few things in there as well, just in what should be in a bio. A few things that I also look for in bands' bios are, any other larger opening or any other larger national acts that they've played with, especially now with all these festivals popping up, what festivals they've played with, because that kind of gives talent buyers a good idea of how they draw in a certain region. If you're from Atlanta and you're playing festivals in Maine, then you obviously have some sort of fan base, up there in that area. So that's definitely something to think about as well. And, again, touching on future plans, like you said, is a great idea. If you have an album, even the plans of an album, that's the right time to put that in your bio so that you can start getting the word out there that you're in the studio, working on your next release.
Definitely. And that was a really good point with putting in where you have played in some places and people you've played with. That's actually a really good point, and I did miss that.
Yeah,
so thank you
even
for adding
venues,
that.
even if you've opened for whoever at the Brooklyn Bowl. Brooklyn Bowl is a big name. If you say you've played at the Brooklyn Bowl, it's like, all right, well, damn, like you guys are obviously hard workers. You're determined. You know how to get into these venues. All these things are really good things to continue to update your bio with.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to kind of bring back together, and the takeaway from what we're trying to say here is how branding determines so much your first impression, that just like the resume, like you said, how you're viewed by fans, the press, and potential buyers and industry professionals. And like I said before, oftentimes people are reading the bio before they even listen to you, and it's really important to keep that in mind when you're writing it, so that people can get an idea of what you are and really feel that through your bio. And they're going to be used over and over and over, and they need to be, and this is so important, they need to be well written, and they need to be grammatically correct, and you need to have spell checker. It drives me nuts.
That's a great point. I know publicity is expensive. I know hiring companies to help you with tours are expensive. Getting writers are expensive. However, if you don't have anyone in your band team, in your crew, that can write a good bio, you should absolutely consider farming out that bio. Even if you farm out that bio and your first version of a bio you can use that for future templates. But there are way too many bios out there that are just horribly written, even to the point of having typos in there. That's just something that you can't have that.
I'm fixing typos when I'm putting them in marketing and press releases for the Stone Church constantly. It's really, and even if, I do agree. I think that working with a professional is well, I mean, it's the best case scenario. But if you can't do that, you've got to know somebody who can write well. Somebody in your social circles who can at least proofread it.
So send your parents to proofread it.
Exactly. It's you've got to at least proofread it. Like I can't tell you how many times I've had its and its instead of it apostrophe s or things like that.
It's there.
Yeah, all the time, and it really speaks to your professionalism as a band. And again, getting back to if you're looking, I mean, fans will forgive you for it, but you're looking at the press and you're looking at venue buyers and those and industry executives who are looking at you and trying to analyze, where you are in your levels. If you've got these things, these issues with your bios, it's going to stand out. Would you
Yeah,
say?
absolutely. I mean, I don't think this is a fan issue whatsoever. I think this is more of,
No.
a band, like you say, showing the professionalism, because me as a manager and as an agent, if I read, and it's happened many times before, that I'll read a bio, not even, a 2-page bio, but a 1 to 2 paragraph bio with more than one typo in there, and that's immediately a red flag for me. And I am just a small time booking agent, and I read those kinds of things. So I mean,
Hmm.
people do take notice, and this has nothing to do with the fans. This has more to do with venues, talent buyers, agents, promoters, and really
Hmm.
trying to represent yourself as as a professional entity.
Well, and at the same time, though, I mean, yes, I don't think that fans are not going to like your music because you had the wrong it's. But at the same time, having a high level of professionalism, success attracts people, and
Right.
doing everything that you can to be as the most professional in everything you do in all of your marketing will attract um, more fans ultimately, and that's what you want because you want people in the door because that's how you make your money. So,
Yep.
well, all right. Well, I think I do. You have any other thoughts before we close this
Yeah,
out?
as far as the takeaway, I think my biggest takeaway for anyone, that's really trying to find a way to brand their band, is again consistency. Finding that way to really portray your music through either words, symbols, something.
Mhm.
But once you get that, having it be consistent. Don't use different fonts. If you
Mhm.
have a logo, use your logo and use that font for
Mhm.
everything. If you
Mhm.
have found your one logo, use that logo on everything. Use the same color schemes. Use the same words. Just have this
Mhm.
consistency about your band and your brand that can really, even if someone even isn't listening to you, and someone explains um your band to them, they can immediately say, oh, that's so and so, or that sounds like so and so. I
Mhm.
think the consistency is huge, because that's what your fans are going to repeatedly see, and you kind of want that brainwashing method, of just having that
Mhm.
in your fans' minds, and just keeping it there, and returning to the same thing over and over again.
Well, and the consistency really depends on you being thoughtful about this process and being deliberate about it. And one thing that I would recommend is write it down. Write down and create a style guide for yourself. Get yourself a Word document that says this is our font. This is the bio that we use for these things. This is the colors that we use. And have a reference so that every time that you're doing something, you know exactly what color scheme to use, exactly what font to use, exactly what logo to use, which bio to use
Hmm.
where, and being deliberate about that will help you be consistent. Um, I agree with you completely. All right, well, that is our podcast for today. That was Well, that wasn't too quick. We were about a half an
Yeah, we
hour.
got half an hour.
So coming up, I've been talking with what is Dave's last name? How do you pronounce it? From
Disiani.
Pigeons, DeCiani.
Yeah.
We've been talking to him about coming on
Sweet.
in probably the beginning of May. In the end of May, we've got Peter Irvine, a entertainment lawyer, going to be coming on and talking about some of the legal aspects. I've been talking about this for a while, but I'm gotten him down to a date, probably May 30th
Nice.
ish.
Cool.
Dave is going to be on week of May 10th.
What are
And
we talking about with Dave? That's
well, I started talking. I'm not quite sure exactly what we're going to completely talk about, but I definitely want to talk about Pigeons. I think Pigeons Playing Ping Pong does an amazing job marketing, and I want to talk to
Yeah,
him about
absolutely.
how they've developed that. And
Yeah.
they've done a great job branding. Great job branding. And I think it's a really good case in point of exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, I haven't read their bio now that I think about it because I'm a fan and I'm not. I probably have read their bio because I booked them at the Stone Church, but I don't remember their bio. But visually, they do a great job of branding all of the marketing that I've seen,
Yeah.
and they've got. But the thing that got me to want to talk to him is they've got a really active Facebook group, the Flock. Are
Oh,
you
right.
a member of that?
They're
Yeah.
fan group. I'm not,
Yeah.
but I will join that.
Yeah, and I am interested in how to develop these Facebook groups and these communities around bands. And there's a lot of advantages of using Facebook groups because Facebook has made it so hard with the algorithm to um, to really reach people. You know, you put up a post on your fan
Right,
page and
because
it reaches like
everyone can see them. Yeah.
exactly. Well, you get notifications with a fan group, and
Right.
that is really very advantageous. But how to make it
Yeah.
organic and real, and not just salesy. So that was one of the topics that's what I approached him about. But I
Sweet.
think that there's probably a lot more that we could talk about.
Yeah,
And
there's definitely a lot that you can talk to Dave about
yeah,
for sure.
so yeah, so we're gonna have a phone conversation and just have a kind of feel it out, and you know whatever your input, obviously, you know if you have some ideas there. So,
Cool.
but I think he's gonna be a really cool person to talk to, and a
Yeah,
few
yeah, yeah.
other uh, irons on the fire. I'm not quite sure what next week's going to be, but you know, it's always a fun surprise. So this has been the 18th episode of the Engage Your Fanbase podcast, Killer Band Branding and Bios That Rock. I'm Kara Karma with Simon Says Booking and Publicity. And
And I am Erwin Schmeckowitz with Ever Upward Entertainment, booking and management based out of Denver.
you can get all kinds of good tips and music marketing advice and more of our podcasts on engageyourfanbase.com. And we're also on YouTube. And as well, we are on iTunes. So if
Woo.
depending on where you're listening to this or watching this, you will have already known one of those things. And we're on Blab every week, usually on Mondays at 9 or Tuesdays at 9, depending on everybody's crazy schedules because we work with musicians and that makes everything crazy. All right.
Sure.
So thanks for watching and we'll see you next week. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.